I woke up that morning thinking, maybe this year will be different. I wasn't asking for much, just a phone call, a simple happy birthday message. Even a meme from my younger brother would have done the trick. But no, by noon, my phone was still as silent as a church on Monday. I turned 30 that day. 3 decades on this planet, and somehow I still hadn't earned a text from the people who raised me. It stung. Not like a dramatic heartbreak kind of sting, no. This one was quiet, dull but persistent. The kind that whispers, "You don't matter, you never did." I stared at my screen like it might suddenly light up with love. But instead, all I had were notifications from apps reminding me of other people's birthdays. The irony. I sat on the edge of my bed, wearing pajamas I'd bought myself last Christmas, because no one else ever did, and debated whether to order a cupcake from the bakery down the street. But I didn't. It felt too pathetic. Like throwing a party, only the walls would attend. Instead, I made instant ramen, sprinkled in some green onions like that would fool my soul into believing it was special, and opened my laptop to work. Yes, I worked on my birthday. Freelance design gigs don't care what day it is, and I needed the money. My rent wasn't going to pay itself, and Seattle, my someday dream city, was still just a number in my budgeting spreadsheet. I should probably explain. I've been saving to move to Seattle for over 5 years. Quietly, obsessively. Every holiday skipped, every dinner out declined, every unwanted gift returned. I called it my invisible plan. No one in my family knew. Honestly, I wasn't sure they'd even care if they did. Growing up, it always felt like I had to scream just to be heard, and even then, I was still background noise. I was the responsible one, the she's fine sibling, the one who didn't cause trouble, so nobody noticed when I was hurting. They noticed my sister though, always. She was chaos and sparkle rolled into one, and Mom adored her for it. Dad said she had personality. What I had, apparently, was potential, which sounded more like a polite way of saying incomplete. It wasn't until I turned 16 that I stopped asking for anything. And yet, a part of me, this small, stupid, persistent part, still hoped that 30 would mean something, that maybe someone would remember, maybe someone would see me. At 3:47 p.m. I got a text. My heart actually jumped. "Hey, can you send $1,800 by next Friday? We're organizing something big for Dad's 60th. Everyone's chipping in. No hi, no happy birthday. Not even a fake, hope you're well." Just that. From my sister, of course. For a moment, I didn't move. I just stared at the screen, rereading that single sentence until my stomach twisted. They forgot my birthday, again, but they remembered Dad's. And not just remembered, they were going all out. A big celebration. Fancy, loud. For him. And I didn't even get a slice of cake or a phone call. It wasn't about the money. I could have scraped together $1,800, though it would have crushed my Seattle fund. No, it was about what that message represented. I was never part of their celebrations, only their obligations, their expectations, their wallets. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. Quietly, cleanly. Like a thread pulled too tight for too long. That was the moment I knew. I would never go back. And before I could second-guess myself, I typed out a reply, "Sent." And then I opened my banking app and wired exactly $1. Chapter 2. The $1,800 favor. I half expected my phone to buzz within seconds. Maybe was this a mistake, or at least a "what the hell" from my sister. But no, silence again. Not even a follow-up, to show she noticed the amount. I stared at the confirmation screen. That neat little $1 transfer sitting there like a middle finger in velvet gloves. It was petty, it was symbolic, and for the first time in years, it felt like I finally said something loud enough for them to hear, even if they didn't listen yet. 15 minutes later, I got the reply. Just one word, seriously? No punctuation, no name, not even an emoji to soften it. Yes, seriously. I typed out a full response. Paragraphs dripping with all the resentment I'd swallowed over the years, the forgotten birthdays, the gaslighting, the way they treated me like the emotionally stable one, which really meant the one we can neglect because they won't explode. I wrote it all, then I deleted it. They wouldn't understand. They never had. Instead, I replied with something that sounded more like me, cold but firm. It matched the energy you gave me 3 days ago. There was no answer. I turned off my phone and closed my laptop. Something inside me felt calmer than it should have. like the ache in my chest had exhaled after holding its breath for a decade. But it didn't last long. The guilt crept in around dinner. I could hear my mother's voice in my head. "You always make everything about you. This is for your father. Don't be selfish." She used that line like duct tape, slapped over every emotion I ever had that didn't serve her narrative. And yeah, I knew Dad turning 60 was important. But was it more important than the fact none of them remembered my 30th? 30 is a milestone. At least it was to me. I thought, maybe, just maybe, someone would show up. Instead, they showed their hand. The next morning I woke up to a group text from my aunt. She wasn't even in the original conversation, which meant my sister had roped her in. I didn't even have Aunt Carla saved in my phone, but I knew it was her because she wrote like she was still stuck in the 90s. "Sweetheart, I don't know what's going on, but family always comes first. We all have our moments, but this isn't the time to be dramatic. We just need your support. Let's not make a scene." There it was, the scene. They were worried I would make one. Not about the hurt I felt, not about what I needed. They were already managing the optics. Classic. I didn't respond. I went to work that day like nothing happened. I made lattes for strangers and smiled at customers, and laughed at dad jokes from my coworker, Miguel, who once told me I look like a girl who listens to sad indie music and hides a sword in her apartment. He wasn't wrong. After my shift, I sat in the break room and pulled out my Seattle file. It wasn't a real file, more like a cluttered Google Doc filled with apartment listings, flight comparisons, and budget breakdowns. I'd been building it for years, adding little notes to myself like, "Dream neighborhood," or "Too expensive but manifesting." The savings were there, not a lot, but enough. If I was careful, I could make it. If I skipped the guilt trip. If I let go. And that's when the idea hit me. I wouldn't just say no, I'd disappear. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, out of self-preservation. They wanted money, I wanted peace, so I chose peace. I booked a one-way ticket to Seattle for 2 weeks from that day. Enough time to wrap up my freelance contracts. Enough time to say quiet goodbyes to the few people who mattered. But I didn't tell my family, not this time. People say your 30s are when you finally figure yourself out, but I think I started figuring myself out the day I realized they never really saw me. I didn't just feel forgotten on my birthday. I had always been the afterthought. The filler child. The quiet one who didn't complain, who followed the rules, who knew how to shrink herself so others could shine brighter. At school, I was the straight-A kid teachers loved, but other kids overlooked. At home, I was the easy one, which meant I was invisible, unless someone needed a chore done, a ride, or someone to deflect blame onto. My younger sister Kayla was the star. Dramatic, loud, always in trouble but always forgiven. She could crash the car and still get a hug. I could get a promotion and hear nothing but silence. I still remember one Christmas vividly. I was 12. I saved up my allowance for weeks to buy Dad a nice fountain pen. He liked handwriting letters, said it made him feel like a real gentleman. When he opened it, he gave me a distracted nod and kept unwrapping gifts. Kayla had made him a paper crown with glitter and the words "King of the Grill" glued on. He wore that stupid thing all day. That was the first time I realized effort didn't equal attention. It only got worse as I got older. At my high school graduation, I scanned the bleachers for Mom. She wasn't there. She'd taken Kayla to an out-of-town gymnastics meet. Dad came late and spent the whole time on his phone. After the ceremony, he gave me a thumbs up from the parking lot and left without saying a word. I walked home in my gown. Alone. I remember gripping my diploma so tightly my hands shook. But it wasn't rage. It was the cold realization that no matter how hard I tried, I was never going to be the person they celebrated. By college, I stopped trying. I paid my own tuition, picked up jobs, applied for grants, scholarships, freelanced on weekends. I never asked them for a cent. I told myself that made me strong, independent. But deep down, I still craved something embarrassingly simple. Acknowledgement. Not even love, just being seen. And the funny thing is, whenever I mentioned anything to them, anything that made me uncomfortable or sad or tired, they made me feel like I was the problem. "Why are you so sensitive? Don't be dramatic. You're just too serious. Lighten up." So I stopped talking. It wasn't worth the echo. When I started building my Seattle escape plan, it wasn't just about the city. It was about freedom. About starting over in a place where no one knew me as the girl who was fine all the time. I wanted to be someone else, someone I didn't have to keep proving existed. I kept it to myself for years. Even my closest friend, Dana, only found out recently. She was the kind of person who always checked in, even if we hadn't talked in months. A week before my birthday, she called just to say, "Hey, I know it's coming up. Want to grab a drink and pretend adulthood isn't swallowing us whole?" That single sentence meant more to me than any of the family-first platitudes I'd heard from blood relatives. When I told her what had happened, about the forgotten birthday, the $1,800 demand, the $1 reply, she didn't try to soothe it. She didn't say, "They didn't mean it." She just said, "Damn, that's cold." And it was. But it was also real, and hearing someone acknowledge it without sugarcoating, it helped. She was the first person I told about the flight to Seattle. Dana didn't ask if I was sure, she didn't warn me I'd regret it, she just said, "Finally." And I think that was the first time in my life I felt like someone was truly on my side. No conditions, no guilt, just quiet, solid support. That night, I sat down and opened a blank email to my family. I didn't send it, but I wrote it anyway, just to see the words, "You forgot me." So I remembered myself. 2 days after I wired that $1, I got a call from my mother. I didn't pick up. Not because I was trying to be petty, but because I knew exactly what the call would sound like before even hearing her voice. Tight-lipped concern laced with guilt-tripping sweetness, the kind of tone she only used when trying to smooth things over without ever admitting anything was wrong. So I let it ring. Twice. Then silence. Then a voicemail. "We don't know what's gotten into you. This isn't about you, it's about family. Your father deserves a celebration. Everyone's doing their part. You need to grow up." Grow up. That one stuck like a fishbone in my throat, because I had grown up. Faster than anyone else in that family. While Kayla got bailed out of her credit card debt for the 3rd time, and my younger brother lived rent-free well into his late 20s, I was scraping together my life, on my own. No handouts. No phone calls offering help. Just silent expectation and the occasional guilt-laced lecture. I stared at my phone for a long time after that. Not angry, just exhausted. Tired in a way that years of emotional weight makes you. It's not the kind of tired you can nap off. It's the kind that settles into your bones. I left the voicemail unopened for days. Instead, I focused on the countdown to Seattle. 10 days left. I started slowly getting rid of things, stuff I had held on to for too long, but thinking maybe one day someone in my family would ask about them. A sketchbook I filled through college. The first business card I designed. A mug Dad gave Kayla but left at my place because she didn't want it. It had a chip on the rim, and somehow I'd convinced myself it was worth keeping. I dropped it into the trash bin with the kind of carelessness I used to envy in them. That same evening, I drafted an automatic payment transfer for my final freelance invoice. The money came in. It wasn't a huge windfall, but it was enough to push my savings into I can survive 2 months in Seattle territory. I didn't feel victorious. Not yet, but I felt certain, like standing on the edge of a cliff and finally realizing the fall doesn't scare you anymore. A few hours later, another group message came in, this time from my brother. "Not cool, sis. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. Just pitch in like everyone else." I stared at the message, then typed, "I did pitch in. Exactly as much as you all pitched in for my 30th. He left it on read. The next day I sent my landlord notice that I wouldn't renew the lease. 30 days notice. I was planning to be gone in 10. He called to confirm, asked if everything was okay. I told him the truth for once. "Yeah, it's more than okay. I'm finally choosing myself." The next morning I woke up early, made coffee in silence. The kind of silence that felt earned. And then I opened my email and did something bold. I updated my resume, clicked submit on 2 job applications in Seattle I'd been too scared to apply for before. Not because I thought I'd get them, but because I finally understood that I was allowed to try. Even if no one cheered me on. The $1 wasn't just a statement. It was my line in the sand. I'd spent my life paying emotional interest on relationships that never gave back. Now, I was collecting something far more valuable than money, distance, clarity, and finally self-respect. The day I boarded the plane, no one knew I was leaving. I didn't write a dramatic post on social media. I didn't leave a teary voicemail. I didn't even scribble a note to tape to my apartment door. I just packed my things, 2 suitcases, 1 carry-on, a backpack, and walked out quietly, like someone slipping out of a party they were never really invited to. I wore a plain black hoodie and jeans, no makeup, no ceremony, just me, as I was. At the gate, a flight attendant smiled and wished me a good trip. I smiled back and whispered a silent thank you to the universe, not for this exact moment but for every hard invisible decision that led up to it. The flight was calm, the way I hoped my future might be. I didn't cry. I didn't overthink. I just stared out the window and let myself breathe for the first time in years. Seattle welcomed me with a light drizzle and the smell of coffee that seemed to float out of every building. The city was gray and moody and honest in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. It didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. I liked that. I checked into a tiny Airbnb above a bookstore, one of those old buildings where the stairs creaked with every step and the bathroom tiles were cracked like a mosaic of past tenants. It felt real. It felt like mine. The next morning, I walked 3 blocks to a cafe I'd bookmarked years ago in my Seattle dream folder. The Elm House. Brick walls, warm lighting, and the kind of music that hummed instead of shouted. I ordered a chai and asked if they were hiring. They were. The manager, a soft-spoken woman named Nia with a sleeve of tattoos and the kindest eyes I'd ever seen, looked at me for maybe 5 seconds before saying, "You've got quiet strength. We need more of that around here." I nearly choked. No one had ever said something like that to me, not without expecting something in return. She handed me an application and told me to take my time. I filled it out on the spot. 2 days later, I was behind the counter, learning how to steam milk and memorize regulars' orders. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't part of the original plan. But it felt good. Honest. Like I was building something again, brick by brick, with my own hands this time. One evening, as I was closing up, a customer asked me, "You new here?" I nodded and said, "Just moved." He smiled, "Welcome, Seattle's got room for quiet people too." That night I walked home in the rain with my coat zipped up and my headphones in. I wasn't waiting for a call, a text, a birthday cake that never came. I was just me, in a new city, in my own story. And somehow that felt louder than anything my family had ever said. I thought about my $1 transfer again, how small it seemed, almost childish. But now I realized it was the exact opposite. It was the most adult thing I had ever done. Because that dollar, it was a boundary. It was a voice. It was a beginning. I didn't disappear. I chose to start over, on my terms. It took them almost a whole month before my family realized I was gone, not just emotionally, but physically. Maybe they assumed I was giving them the silent treatment. Maybe they thought I'd cave like I always did, show up for Dad's party, plaster on a smile, hand over a check to keep the peace. But I didn't. I left. And I stayed gone. The first message came from my mom. "We've been worried. Where are you?" No greeting. No apology. Just 7 words that arrived a little too late. I didn't reply right away. I let it sit. I'd spent most of my life rushing to answer them, responding even when the answers hurt me. This time I let them wait. 3 days later, came another one. "Your father is asking about you. You missed the party." He was disappointed. Disappointed. I reread that line over and over. It wasn't, "We missed you." It wasn't, "We're sorry we forgot your birthday." It was, "You missed our moment." And that makes us uncomfortable. Even from hundreds of miles away, they still centered themselves. So I took a deep breath, opened my Photos app, and snapped a picture of myself in front of the Elm House Cafe, wearing an apron, holding a to-go cup, and smiling in the most unbothered, peaceful way I'd ever smiled in my life. I sent it with just one line. "I'm where I belong now." No reply. For a few days I thought maybe that was it. That maybe the thread had snapped completely, and honestly I was okay with that. But then, out of the blue, my dad called. I saw his name light up my phone, and against my better judgment I picked up. There was a pause on the line, like he didn't expect me to answer. Then came his voice. "You didn't call me on my birthday." I let out a quiet laugh, one of those hollow ones, the kind that tastes like dust. "Neither did you," I said. He didn't respond, just sat in that silence with me. Then he tried again. "Your sister said you've been acting strange, that you're upset." That word, upset, made it sound like I had a bad day at work or didn't like the weather. Not that I'd reached my emotional limit after years of being overlooked. I swallowed hard. I'm not upset. I'm just done. Another pause. Done with what? He asked, genuinely confused. That's when it hit me. He really didn't know. None of them did. They didn't remember my birthday, my milestones, my struggles, but they still believed they were the victims of my absence. I spoke slowly, clearly, so there would be no misunderstanding. Done being the one who always remembers while being the one no one remembers. He exhaled sharply, like I'd just said something cruel. That's not fair. But it was. It was the fairest thing I'd ever said. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't plead for understanding like I used to. I just let the silence do the talking. And eventually, he filled it. So, what now? You just leave the family? That question didn't sting like I thought it would. Because the truth is, I hadn't left the family, they just never truly welcomed me in. I'm building something better, I said, and maybe it's not big or loud or perfect, but it's mine, and it sees me. He didn't say anything after that. Just hung up. No goodbye. No I love you, just click. And still, I didn't regret a word. That night, I closed the cafe and walked home through the rain. The streets shimmered under streetlights, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel invisible. I just felt free. Some people think closure comes with a long talk, maybe tears, a mutual understanding and a warm hug at the end. Mine came in the shape of a quiet, intentional $1. That single dollar did what decades of words couldn't. It drew a line, not out of vengeance but out of clarity. I didn't vanish to hurt them. I didn't walk away hoping they'd chase me. I left because I finally realized that staying was costing me more than leaving ever could. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. In Seattle, my world grew smaller and richer at the same time. I had less pressure, less drama, less noise, but I had more peace, more control, more of me. At the cafe, I became a part of something. I wasn't just the new girl anymore. Regulars started learning my name. Nia let me design the chalkboard menus. Miguel introduced me to his fiancée and invited me to their wedding next spring. Dana flew out for a weekend and we sat on my apartment floor with takeout boxes and too much wine, talking about nothing and everything. No one asked me to pretend, no one kept score, no one forgot my birthday. Speaking of which, my 31st came around quietly, a year later. A full year since I sent that $1 and walked away. I didn't throw a party, I didn't buy myself a cake. But when I walked into the cafe that morning, Naya grinned and pointed to the pastry case. Someone had spelled out HBD in blueberries on a scone. Miguel gave me a card with a drawing of a tiny sword inside, and the words, "For our quiet warrior." And I cried. Just a little, the good kind of tears. Later that night, I posted a short entry on the blog I'd started anonymously. Stories about boundaries, emotional labor, healing. It had grown more than I expected. People commented. They shared their own experiences. One person wrote, "I thought I was the only one, but now I think maybe I just needed to read yours." That night, I lay in bed with the window cracked open, the sound of rain tapping the glass, and I whispered the words I never thought I'd feel. I'm proud of me. Not because I was perfect, but because I stopped waiting for them to value me, and started learning how to value myself. I never sent another $1. But I've spent every day since investing in something far more precious. My voice, my peace, my life. So if you've ever been the forgotten one, the quiet sibling, the overlooked child, the responsible adult everyone leans on but never sees, just know this: you don't have to disappear to be free. You just have to choose yourself. And sometimes, all it takes is $1. If this story echoed something inside you, if you've ever felt like the invisible one, don't keep it buried. Leave a comment, share your story. Let's remind each other that silence doesn't mean absence. We exist, we matter, and we are never as alone as we think.